Have you ever wondered why you suddenly felt this massive urge to buy something you didn't even know existed 5 minutes ago? Or why certain prices just feel like an absolute steal? Well, welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to completely decode the customer journey by looking at 9 distinct business and psychology concepts. We're going to uncover the hidden psychological forces that actively drive our buying decisions, and more importantly, we'll see exactly how these invisible little nudges translate directly into a company's hard bottom line. It's this fascinating intersection of human behavior and corporate math, and I can't wait to get into it.
So we're going to follow the chronological life cycle of a customer across 4 key phases today. First up, grabbing your attention. Second, the psychology of pricing. Third, shaping the buyer's memory. And finally, we'll wrap up with the hard financial truths.
All right, let's just jump right into the first stage of the journey. Part 1, grabbing your attention, and how brands actually become familiar and honestly, totally irresistible.
Our very first concept is the mere exposure effect. This is a psychological phenomena where we basically develop a natural preference for things simply because we're familiar with them. I mean, think about it. When a brand uses consistent visibility, like those retargeting ads that just seem to follow you from website to website, they aren't actually hard selling you. They're quietly building trust over time. Our brains literally love familiarity. It feels safe to us. So without any aggressive sales pitch whatsoever, just the mere exposure to a brand's logo or product lowers your defenses and makes them naturally irresistible.
Now, I want you to think about your own behavior for a second. Why can't you ignore a cliffhanger? Why is it that when you're watching a binge-worthy TV show, you simply cannot turn it off when an episode ends on a suspenseful note? Or think about when you're setting up a new online profile, and there's a progress bar just sitting there at 80%. Why does it bother you so much until it finally hits 100%?
Well, the psychological principle behind that nagging feeling is our second concept, the Zeigarnik Effect. This basically dictates that unfinished tasks stick in our memory far better than completed ones. And let me tell you, businesses absolutely weaponize the Zeigarnik Effect. They deliberately use progress bars, staged rollouts, and content cliffhangers to keep you deeply engaged. Your brain desperately craves closure. And companies know that if they can keep a task feeling, unfinished, you're going to stay on their platform, obsessing over it until the task is finally done.
Okay, moving right along to part 2, the psychology of pricing, or as I like to call it, the sneaky ways they get you to click buy. Think about this exact number, $19.99. It's literally everywhere, right? Every store, every website. But I want you to notice your own visceral reaction to seeing a price tag ending in 99 cents. It just feels significantly better than a flat $20, doesn't it? But why? I mean, it's literally a 1-cent difference. That brings us to concept number 3, charm pricing. Ending prices in odd numbers, like 0.99 or 0.95, triggers a very specific psychological bias. Because we read from left to right, our brain immediately anchors to that very first digit. So when you see the 1 in 19, your brain actively reads $19.99 as being closer to $10 than to $20. It is an instant, totally subconscious calculation that completely tricks your brain into thinking the item is a massive bargain. It just feels cheaper.
But here's the thing. Pricing isn't just about the numbers, it's about the emotional weight of the transaction. Let's compare 2 things, the joy of gaining $50 versus the pain of losing $50. Now, logically, they should carry the exact same emotional weight, right? $50 is $50. But psychology tells us a completely different story, which introduces our 4th concept, loss aversion. The psychological pain you feel on the losing side is actually twice as powerful, twice as heavy as the pleasure of gaining that exact same amount. Marketers understand this intense fear of loss intimately, and they leverage loss aversion to get you to act right now. This is exactly why they offer free trials, because once you have a product, even just temporarily, your brain actually takes ownership of it. Giving it up at the end of the trial triggers that painful feeling of loss. The exact same thing goes for limited time offers or flash sales with a ticking clock. The intense fear of missing out, of losing that great opportunity, completely overrides your rational budget and pushes you right toward the buy button.
And this brings us to our 5th concept, choice paralysis. We tend to think that, as consumers, we want endless options. Give us everything, right? But when a company presents 20 options, the real outcome is just decision anxiety. You become so overwhelmed trying to pick the absolute perfect one that you often end up making no purchase at all. But when a company simplifies those choices down to just 2 or 3 options, it becomes a remarkably simple choice, which leads to high sales. By removing the anxiety of making the wrong choice, they completely clear the path for you to purchase.
All right, part 3, shaping the buyer's memory. This is all about managing your feelings after the money has already been spent.
The second the money leaves your account, a new threat emerges for the company. Our 6th concept is post-purchase dissonance. You probably know it better as classic buyer's remorse, that awful, sinking feeling of doubt and regret you get right after making a big purchase. To combat this, businesses don't just leave you alone. No way. They immediately deploy automated thank you emails, welcome videos, and clever onboarding sequences. They do this rapidly to validate your decision, stroke your ego a bit, and completely eliminate that doubt before it can fester into a return or a refund.
As they guide you through using the product, they're highly aware of the customer journey timeline. Notice how the flow works. You start out neutral, the middle is just kinda okay. But then there's this moment of peak emotion that's great, and the end is absolutely fantastic. This leads us perfectly into our 7th concept, the Peak-End Rule. What's absolutely fascinating about this is that human memory completely ignores the overall mathematical average of an event. When you look back, you don't calculate an average of your happiness, you only evaluate experiences based on 2 very specific points.
You evaluate the whole experience based purely on its peak emotional intensity and exactly how it ends. That is why a strong final touch can literally make a mediocre experience feel absolutely great in your memory. A stellar finale, like a beautifully packaged unboxing experience or a surprisingly delightful final interaction with customer support, covers up a multitude of earlier sins. If the end is great, your brain records the whole brand as great. Finally, Part 4, the hard financial truths. Let's look at how companies actually measure the success of all these psychological hacks.
Time to peek behind the curtain and see the hard math. How do companies actually know this stuff is working? Well, it all comes down to 2 vital metrics. Our 8th concept is the contribution margin. Let's break this down sequentially so the math is super easy to digest. Step 1, you take the total sale. Step 2, you subtract the variable production costs, so the materials and direct labor it took to make that one specific item. What you're left with in Step 3 is the contribution margin. This is the actual money left over from a sale that goes directly toward paying off the company's fixed bills, like rent and salaries, and ultimately builds their profit. Literally every psychological trick to get you to buy is designed to inflate this exact margin.
But, as we know, getting you to buy isn't free. Which brings us to our 9th and final concept, blended CAC, or Customer Acquisition Cost. This is defined as the total marketing and sales budget divided by all new customers gained. This metric reveals the true average financial cost a company pays to successfully nudge a total stranger to the mere exposure effect, charm pricing, and loss aversion until they finally pull out their wallet and become a buyer.
The reason we call it blended CAC is because it factors in absolutely everything. It includes the paid ads budget, the organic reach efforts, and the sales team budget. By combining both paid and organic channels into one mathematical equation, the company sees the undeniable, true cost of their entire psychological customer journey. If the contribution margin we just talked about is higher than this blended CAC, the company prints money. If it's lower, the company dies, no matter how good their psychological tricks are.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a thought. We've decoded the familiarity, the pricing illusions, the memory shaping, and the hard math that justifies all of it. So the very next time you feel that sudden, undeniable urge to click buy, is it truly your choice or is it their design? Thank you so much for watching, and keep a close eye out for these invisible nudges out there in the real world.